Hello again, Alex Ray. I thought I would address your question again by video because I think it's a little bit easier. You were asking what if you are already in orbit? How do you set up the plan to go out to Mars? At least I think that's basically what you were asking. Well, it's basically the same thing that we would do if we were sitting here on Earth. So you can see I've got the Delta glider sitting here on the runway. I'll use the scenario editor to put it in orbit. So we'll go orbital elements, select kilometers, and we'll just put it at 7,000, set the eccentricity to 0, hit apply. So we are now in orbit, and we didn't really plan on any particular orbit, so I don't really know even where I'm at in orbit around Earth, but that's not terribly important. I'll come over to this view, and we'll basically set up the plan the same way. The only assumption that I'm going to make is that you are using a date that's good for going out to Mars. You didn't really specify in your post whether or not the date mattered, but I'm going to at least make the assumption that we're still using a good date for Mars. So we'll bring up transx on both sides, and we'll go to escape, we'll go forward, we'll go to Mars, and we'll view the eject plan, put in the amount of prograde that's necessary to raise our orbit out to that of Mars. And we do have to do this. You can't just set up the maneuver, at least it's not a good idea. So we'll put in the prograde. You can see the closest approach coming down. And I'll just continue adding some prograde until that won't go any lower. And we're getting down to, about that point. Now, there's a better way to set this plan up, but we'll just do it this way for now. Because you can see here we're leaving Earth here and we're arriving, it's not exactly a Hammond transfer, but nevertheless, this will work. Then we would just kind of tweak our date a little bit, because again, the date here is going to be whatever time it was when you set up the scenario. So we want to go back a little bit, maybe do a bit of a date adjustment, see if that helps at all one way or the other. And it's not doing too much for us, so we'll actually just leave that alone because we'll set up a maneuver here in a minute anyway. Then back on stage 1 on your left side, go to it while you're in view setup, go to graph projection, set that to plan, and I guess that'll be good for that. VW over to escape plan, and we do the same thing that we would do if we were sitting on Earth. We would put our PE distance to whatever our current altitude is. So let's actually bring up orbit MFD, put the distance to PE or APR. So we're going to set the PE distance here equal to this number. So let's go do an adjustment. Go back here, it's going to be 7,000, basically even. Do another adjustment, and we're getting close. And that's good enough right there. Now, VAR over to eject orientation, and this is why we still set up the eject plan, because without having the eject plan, then we don't really know, we can't really set up our eject orientation. So let's just hit plus, and I can see here the relative inclination is climbing. That's not what I want. Let's go the other direction. And again, we're just going to lay that white line straight over top of our current location and see how far out of plane we are. So basically, if we were to try to do a plane alignment right now with our plan, that would be a 19-degree plane alignment. That's a lot. Let's not do that. So let's find out where the lowest point is at in our orbit. So we just hit plus plus and just kind of watch that relative inclination coming down. So it's basically saying, when we get over here, we'll be able to get a better plane alignment. And it looks like about right there, that's going to be the lowest. So when we get to this point, we would do our plane alignment burn. Other than that, we just kind of go on and set up our maneuver, but let's take care of this first. Let's warp time forward to that point. And I'm not actually sure if I need to go normal plus or normal minus here, so we'll actually just kind of guess. We'll go normal plus first. And put in a little bit of main engine. And that's the right direction. We got lucky on that. Full power on the main engine, just bring that relative inclination all the way down. And, you know, obviously this isn't a very good way to do it. You're using a whole lot of fuel that you wouldn't use if you were to just set this up while landed at Earth. The other option would be to skip the plane alignment burn altogether and take care of it at one of the nodes as part of your mid-course correction. That might be a better way to do it. So we can just kind of follow our burn here. Now we want to make an adjustment on that white line, because as the Delta Glider orbits the Earth, you can see that green line gets slightly ahead of our location. So just every now and then, just go to a finer adjustment if necessary. Just bump it forward a little bit. That just gives you a more accurate number for what your relative inclination is right now at this point in your orbit. Let's go ahead and warp time forward, get through that a little quicker. And we can bump that line forward again. It needs to be laying over top of where we are. And as this number gets lower, this gets increasingly sensitive, so we'll have to go down to an even finer setting than fine. Getting pretty close to the bottom. It's getting a little more sensitive, so I'm going to go to super. And let's start thinking about backing off the main engines. And we'll kind of go with that for a moment. Let's get that line right over top and switch to linear translation. And we can still use a little bit of main engine to align ourselves. And we're almost at 0. Let's go ahead and do an adjustment here. Get down an ultra setting. And there we are. Relative inclination is basically perfectly 0. So now we simply set up a maneuver to finalize the plan, and that's no different than what you would do otherwise, like we did yesterday. So just back up on stage on that side, view over to maneuver, turn maneuver mode on, go through your variables until you're at prograde, put in that number. So enter 3496, VAR over to the date, and just swing that around. And again, at this point, it's just exactly like we did yesterday. So I hope that answers your question. Again, I'm not entirely sure what you were asking. It was a little unclear to me, but again, starting from orbit, that's how we can set that up. If you want to avoid that large relative inclination burn, then you'll have to basically, I've never done it, but I'm guessing that what you'd want to do is just set up your plan, and then when you warp time forward, get out away from the Earth, get to one of the nodes, and then do your plane alignment burn, you know, relative to the sun, instead of here at Earth. So hopefully that answers the question.